Hello, this is Dolores Cannon, and I've been asked to do a series of shows based on the work that I do. And I've been involved in the paranormal and the strange and the unusual for about 40 years, so there's a great deal of work that I'll be able to talk about. So I know I'll be able to cover a great deal in the next shows to come. The main thing I want to make clear today is what I do and how I get my information so that people will be able to follow it through. I've written 14 books dealing with my adventures in the paranormal and the strange and the unusual, and I'm still working on more. It just seems to keep coming. And I travel all over the world giving lectures and seminars and speaking at conferences and expos. And it just seems like it keeps growing and growing, because everywhere I go, even in other countries, there are huge crowds of people that come to the lectures. People in this little town where I live, they always say, well, where do you find anyone who could be interested in these things? Because I'm in the Bible Belt. They don't understand it anyway. And then they say, where can you find anyone who is interested in listening to these strange ideas? I tell them you don't have any idea, because all over the world there was just hundreds and hundreds of people that are into metaphysics, and it seems to be growing. More and more are coming into these things and beginning to ask questions and want to know what is going on out there. I think we have realized finally that religion doesn't have all of the answers. The science definitely doesn't have all the answers. There's a lot that cannot be explained by logic and examination, numbers, the way they try to do. They usually, like with religion, just says, just listen to what we say and don't ask questions. You're not supposed to ask questions. But there are more and more people who are asking questions. They want to know what it's all about. They don't want to take what they've been told for years and years. They want to know more. So they are branching out. This doesn't mean we have to leave church behind, because I feel we can combine the two and just go on and add to it. And if they're happy with their beliefs and in their church systems, that's fine. That's where they are, where they're at. But whenever they begin to ask questions and want to know more, then the answers are there, and they're beginning to stretch their minds and stretch their belief systems to move out into, I guess you would say, the cosmos, or out into the other realms of reality. But first I want to explain what it is that I do. Because I'm involved in so many strange things, and I've written 14 books dealing with these things, a lot of people think that I channel, or that I'm a psychic. I'm not. I am a hypnotherapist. I've been doing hypnosis for 40 years. I became involved with it many, many years ago. But what I specialize in is past life therapy, past life regression and past life therapy. This is where you take the people back into the other lifetimes to find the answers to the problems in this lifetime. Many times people have been going to doctors and to psychiatrists, and they've had problems all their life, and they cannot find answers for it. And they're at their wits' end, and I guess then we become the last resort whenever they want to come to a past life therapist or a hypnotist, because the doctors are sure not going to encourage them, especially the psychiatrists, to choose this route. But most of the time, the reasons why they can't find the answers is because they're focusing on this life. And after years of trying, the answers are not in this life. Because with reincarnation, we come back again and again. A lot of the things that have happened to us in the other lives are carried over into this life. We can have I guess you would say overlays. We can have residual effects, things that carry over and are just deposited into this life, creating problems. Especially, I've found the way the person died in another lifetime. This can be very traumatic in their subconscious mind and carry over into this life, like phobias allergies. Phobias would be easy to understand. If you have fear of water, fear of heights, fear of fire, you can see that it could relate back to the way the person died in another lifetime. And it causes the trauma to continue into this lifetime. These are what I work with because I found that the answers are there. I found a whole lot of things that most people don't even realize. But let me go back to the beginning and explain how I got into this. I actually got involved in hypnosis 40 years ago. It was in the late 1960s, a long time ago. And in those days, it was what was called normal hypnosis. I was involved with helping people quit smoking, lose weight, what we consider the normal use of hypnosis. My husband was helping me at that time. We were working on these things together. And at that time, there were no books written on past life therapy. It was just the ordinary hypnosis. Now, my husband was in the Navy. We were stationed down in Texas. He had been in the Navy for 21 years. He was career Navy. He had been in Vietnam, and he had just been back a year or so. He was over there about 3 years, one of the first aircraft carriers to go over when the Vietnam War first began. So he was there at the beginning. He was a radar controller on board the aircraft carriers. So he had come back, and we were stationed in Texas, and it was like trying to get your lives back to normal after the disruption. And he knew what I was doing with an ordinary hypnosis, and sometimes he would help me with these things. Well, as I said, I was doing the normal hypnosis, and this doctor on the base, they had a patient who was one of the Navy wives who was very overweight, and she was into overeating. And he knew it was affecting her case, and he thought maybe if we can get her to relax, and the hypnosis might help her with that, it would help her a lot more than the medications that he had her on. If we could just get her to relax and to go with that type of hypnosis. So that's what we were going to try to do. And then everything got very strange, and it was something totally unexpected. But as we were working with her, we decided to take her back into her childhood, maybe to help find out the cause of why she wanted to overeat and what was happening, just to go back to see her childhood life. When we were working with this, she suddenly jumped into a past life. And it was in Chicago during the Roaring '20s, where she was a flapper and living with the gangsters. And he's like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Because she definitely wasn't alive in those times. What in the world, what did we get here? And she became this very flamboyant woman and describing the times and talking about her big black car and all of this. And we're looking at each other, what's going on here? This is what started the first adventure, because it's the first time we had been exposed to something like this. Now, I had always been interested in the paranormal most of my life. I knew it existed. I believed in these things, but I'd never really read a lot about it and not been exposed to it. I guess it's because in those days there wasn't that much out on it. There definitely wasn't any books out to help a hypnotist if they got into a situation where the patient went back into a past life. There were no instructions at all. The only book out at that time was The Search for Bridie Murphy. That was along this line. And nowadays, that book would not even be published because it is so ordinary and simple compared to the things that have been discovered since. But in the 1960s, it was like a land-breaking case that somebody had reported going back into past lives with hypnosis. But that was the only book that was out at that time that was even related to what we were doing. Otherwise, we were just more or less on our own. And in those days, the methods of hypnosis were very simple. and complicated and drawn out. We had to use the method that's called watch the shiny object, where you would hang something dangling shiny in front of the person, have them watch it and tell them their eyes were getting tired, and then the long, drawn-out inductions, which I call relaxing the person from the big toe all the way up their body. The long, drawn-out techniques. And then they had a lot of testing that was done to see what level of trance the person was in. All of this took a lot of time. Nowadays, it's not done anymore. At least I hope it isn't done anymore. It shouldn't be, because there are so many easier and simpler ways of doing this now that weren't around in those days. But now we've discovered we don't need all those long, drawn-out ways of doing hypnosis. But I speak now before boards of psychiatrists and hypnotists, and I teach my classes in hypnotism, and I still find people who are still using these old methods, and they're still being taught of watch the shiny, dangling object in front of the person, and the test to see where they are. And that's all they had in those days. But anyway, as we worked with this woman, we were off onto our first adventure, because after that, I guess more curiosity than anything else, we kept taking her back again and again to see where she was going to go. Incidentally, she was helped with her weight and the kidney problem, but our curiosity, we wanted to keep seeing where she was going. So she ended up going through 5 different lifetimes and many different places. It wasn't just in Chicago. She ended up in Germany, living in a castle, and she was in Ireland as an ordinary housewife over there, married to a shoe cobbler. She went through 5 different lifetimes, back to where she was created by God. And can you imagine, with no background in any of this, to hear all of this was totally amazing. And we had no instructions to tell us what to do. So it was just writing our own rules as we went along. And all of this was recorded on the portable tape recorder of the day. Portable. It's quite different than by standards nowadays. Those of you who know about these things will remember the portable tape recorders of those days were huge, with the big 8 to 10 inch reels. They were big reels of tape that had to be put on. And they would record several hours.